So many shocking reactions has been dropping since after this book launch by IBB. So many people coming out to share their displeasure, their frustration, and their own side of the story. Even some people are coming out to share a better way to reconcile those two incidents that was mentioned on the book, which is that of the June 12, 1993, and also the 15th January, 1966, which have been dropping in this page back to back. But in this one, Femi Falana has come out to say Nehigabao, say lie, that IBB can never be allowed to go scot-free on this one. In fact, he even went forward to share his own frustration, and he said that he was unjustly detained, and he also faced so many persecution because of this same event, and because of that he is going to challenge IBB on this one. Now, on the part where IBB was saying that it was external forces that contributed to the annulment of the June 12th election, Femi Falana say Nehigabao, say lie, nothing like that. Say IBB did what he did with his clear eyes. Say you know what he do. In fact, let me allow you to listen to Femi Falana interview at Channels Television with Semu. But as you are listening, be clicking on that share button and also subscribe in case if you have never done so for more updates. And after that, I'll be back. Let's go there.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Femi Falana.
Thank you very much.
At some point, I had a conversation with, let us think, Mike Falana, of how your days in prison during the military days and how he had to independently take care of the children and in your absence were spending times in jail. But I'm imagining what kind of reflections IBB's book would have brought to your mind. In summary, how do you describe the record and the record and the account of former head of state Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida?
Well, I've taken time. I persuaded myself to read the book, and the impression I gathered at the end of the day was that an attempt was made by the retired general to recall events, but perhaps in an attempt to tell a story, he engaged in what I would call a careless distortion of history, because there are gaps that he was unable to fill at the end of the day. And I think he also might have forgotten that not all the dramatics passé have passed away. So history has already taken care of the Babangida tenure. Any attempt by him now to rewrite history failed woefully in the book.
So from your own point of view, you don't quite agree with some of the accounts, especially in some of the dated events and some of the events which you personally are involved. And perhaps let's take it one after the other, because if we both are involved in an event, our accounts may be different depending on where the koboko hits, because the military used koboko a lot on the civilians at the time. But where the koboko hits more on you and where it hurts, where in the book did you feel that the account of IBB was distorted?
Many areas of the book. I mean, talking about the annulment of the election, General Babangida claimed that he traveled to Katsina on the 23rd of June 1993, and he was flabbergasted to learn about the annulment. I beg your pardon. All programs in the second quarter of the schedule, political transition program schedule, including June 12 election. He also banned the courts, particularly the Court of Appeal, that was then entertaining the case. And the Court of Appeal was going to decide the validity of the ex parte order of Justice Ikpeme and the ex parte order of Justice Saleh in the face of Section 19 of Decree 25 of 1987, that no court shall inquire into or make any order to stop elections. No interim order, no interlocutory order or final order will be made by any court to stop the conduct of election. So when the junta discovered that the Court of Appeal was going to set aside those orders, a decree was enacted by General Babangida on the 22nd of June. So altogether, 5 decrees, which justified the annulment. So the announcement of 23rd by Unduka Irabo was anchored on the decrees enacted by him the previous day, justifying the annulment of election. That's number one. Number two, between 23rd of August and 26th, General Babangida promulgated 7 decrees, again to confirm the annulment, to legalize the interim national government, and for the country to move on. He claimed that he was not aware. He was taken aback on the 23rd of June. But on the 26th of June, he made a broadcast, a nationwide broadcast, justifying the annulment and alleging that the election was riddled with corruption, corrupt practices. Even though it appeared to have been fair and free, but the election could not be relied upon. Also on the 22nd of June, he annulled, or rather set aside, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, headed by the late Justice Bola Babalaki, set up by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Chief Justice Mohammed Bello. So how he can turn around to give the impression that some forces, without his knowledge, annul the election? It's not.
Could it be fair to him? Could it be, Mr. Falana, that maybe the man at the very top is not really aware of the machinations of all of the scheming, and a lot of things happened.
The man at the top signed the decree to annul the election. Signed the decree.
Maybe he doesn't know the details of the...
No, Babangida, he was sufficiently intelligent, and he once said, in the face of the crisis, I'm not only in office, I am in power. And he exercised the power against the interests of Nigeria. He also said at that time that they are not the election in the national interest. He never mentioned Abacha. No. And in any case, the annulment you are talking about was perhaps the last stage of the manipulation. Following the criminal annulment of the election, the campaign for democracy organized peaceful protest in many parts of the country. General Babangida ordered that the late Chief Gani Fawoimi, the late Dr. Bekoran Somkuchi, and myself be arrested and brought to Abuja here, where we were charged before a chief magistrate in Wuse here for the allegations were unlawful assembly, conspiracy, unlawful assembly, and sedition. What was the sedition about? That we had published the results of the election, which he has not published in his book. But at that time, it was a criminal. He made it a criminal offense. Our bail was refused at the instance of the government. Again, the junta thought foolishly that once we were put away, there would be no protest in the country any longer. So we were sent to Kuje prison here. Again, sensing that we might get bail in the High Court, General Babangida ordered that we be detained in addition to the court remand under the State Security Detention Person Decree number 2 of 1984. And so we were detained. Now you said We committed an offense by challenging the annulment of election. 32 years later, you are now saying, oh, I regret that we are not the election. So that means you knew. You deliberately arrested me, detained me, charged me, and paraded me as a criminal. Only for you to say now, sorry. No, you didn't say sorry. We regret what we did. No apologies. For me, we are taking it beyond the book. A year earlier, because Nigerians must not forget the fact that when General Babangida staged a palace coup on August 27, 1985, I'm talking of when he removed, and his colleague plotted the removal of another military head of state, General Muhammadu Buhari. He said, he criticized the Buhari Idi Agbon Tanzani's junta for not fixing a terminal date. So he said, we are going to leave office in 1990. In October 1990. 1990 came. He postponed the terminal date to 1992. 1992 came. He changed it to January 1993. January 1993 came, he changed it to August 1993. But what we did in 1992 was to say this postponement had to stop. So we organized protests and published posters. Babangida must go.
IBB must go was very popular.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Was major headlines on major newspapers.
Of course, we were arrested in Lagos, brought to Abuja, FCT, and detained in Kuje prison under decree number 2. When the late Chief Gani Femi went to court, Dr. Bekoro Samkuchi, Baba Omojola, an economist, and myself were brought to Kuje prison 1992. Chief Falana went to court on our behalf. For going to court on our behalf, he too was arrested and made to join us in prison. So I think on the 19th of May, they deceived us in prison that we're going home. So we packed our things. The vehicle that was taking us to the airport purportedly made some maneuver, and we found ourselves at the Gwagwalada Chief Magistrate Court, where we were charged with treasonable felony. Of course, they brought the then announced president to join us, Olusegun Mayegun. So 5 of us were charged with treasonable felony. Since we had no access to our lawyers, so the late Chief Gani Femi and I decided to defend ourselves and our colleagues. So even though we're asking for bail, we turned our arraignment to the trial of the junta. And I recall on that occasion, Chief Femi told the judge, my Chief Magistrate, Malam Bulama, that those who should be standing trial for treason, those who should be in this dock, are in the villa, led by General Babangida, because they had sacked, they had overthrown a democratically elected government on December 31st, 1983. So those are the people that should be standing trial. Mr. And of course, not just simple. When it came to my turn, I made it clear to the judge. This section of the law, Section 41 of the Criminal Code Act, which provides anybody who forms an intention to remove the president of his country during his time of office, otherwise than by constitutional means. I said, my lord, the man calling himself my president has no fixed term of office. So I couldn't have been brought here. Of course, the judge adjourned. 2 weeks later, he granted us bail, very liberal term, 20,000 around one shot in like son. The regime could not stand another proceeding. They couldn't go back to court. So that we don't turn the thing into a full trial of General Babangida and others. So they simply ran away. And the case was struck out. So I'm going to challenge the malicious prosecution My malicious prosecution and that of my colleagues.
Is it not time bound?
Because,
no. I mean, so you want to prosecute General Babangida for whatever happened in his time as a military head?
No, I've assembled a team of lawyers. They are looking into it because he has now brought it to life.
What exactly are you bringing?
He has brought it back to life by now admitting that there was no basis for my prosecution because he now says Abiola won the election, which was the basis of our protest. He's also saying, you know, he shouldn't have, you know, postpone the terminal date of his transition program, which again we're fighting. So which means there was no basis for our prosecution. It's malicious. Again, massive infringements of our rights, human rights. Because when you keep me in Kuje prison, you deny me my right to liberty, my freedom of movement. You also violate my right to choose the government of my country, pursuant to Article 13 of the African Charter.
Is the matter not statute bad?
No, it's not statute bad. Because the man who did it has just come out to say, I did it wrongly.
Mr. Falana, there is something that you said you have...
And again, let me say this. You know, it's not in our court. You can talk of something very statute.
Statute bad, yeah.
In the ECOWAS court in Abuja here, in the case of Femi Falana and Republic of Benin and others, because said any violation after 3 years cannot be pursued here. But later, you know, the improvement of the jurisprudence of the court has now come to the conclusion. I think that was in the case of Federation of Journalists, you know, Gambia, and the government of that country, that once you are talking of serious, gross abuse of human rights, statute of limitation does not apply.
Let me take you on one very, very controversial matter that was also raised by the former head of state in his book, and it has to do with the late Dele Giwa. And let me quote part of what he said. He said, and I quote, "My sense of loss was, however, overwhelmed by the public outcry and the feeling of tragedy in the introduction of an entirely novel mode of killing in our country, coming a few weeks after the OIC crisis, which led to the retirement of my number 2 Commodore, Ebitu Kue. I saw Giwa's wicked and cruel murder as part of a series of booby traps and acts of destabilization being hatched against the administration." End of quote. That's the account of General Babangida. And he said, hopefully, that one day, he said, Giwa was loved by his audience and the rest of the public. Targeting him would shock the public and paint the administration in a feeble light. He's saying that one day, the death and the truth about Dele Giwa's death will be uncovered.
When he frustrated the attempt by the state to uncover the cause of that incident.
General Babangida in the book, Mr. Falana says that a lot of people know his closeness with Dele Giwa, and they wanted to use that to paint him black, his administration black.
His relationship with General Vatsa, right, was much closer than that of Dele Giwa. Vatsa was his best man. They grew up together. They were sleeping in the same room as bachelors. Right? He had them killed without any basis. But coming to Dele Giwa first. On October 19, 1986, when that unfortunate incident happened, one of the early callers in Dele Giwa's house at Okpebi in Lagos was the late Mr. Tony Momma, the information minister of the junta. And he said publicly, just like I said, because of the novel manner of this death, we have never seen it before.
The popular letter bomb.
Yes. We're going to have a public inquiry. 2 days later, the junta reneged on the decision that the public inquiry will be conducted. As if that was not enough, the late Chief Gani Fahimi, a personal friend and lawyer to Dele Giwa, took up the matter, wrote to the government, if you are not willing to prosecute, I am going to prosecute. right? The government ignored him. Gani went to court. The High Court said you have no local standing. What is personal to you? What interest do you have that is greater than members of the public in this unfortunate incident? You went to the Court of Appeal, the same ruling. But the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, she ran like a lion. And in a very unique jurisprudential exposition, the Supreme Court held. I think the leading judgment was delivered by Justice Obaseki, who said, in Nigeria, you cannot challenge a concerned citizen for questioning the death of another person. The late Justice Esho put it in a more admirable manner when he said, the English concept of brother, neighborliness, requires blood brother has nothing to do with us in Africa, where you have the extended family system, and that in matters of this nature, we are all our brothers' keepers. And therefore, Gani as local standard. You know what happened? Gani then went to start the battle from the trial court all over again. Unknown to him, the junta had secretly amended the law, Criminal Procedure Code of Lagos State, to limit private prosecution of criminal cases to perjury. So by the time Gani now started, the lawyer of the suspect of the government raised an objection that, my lord, you no longer have jurisdiction. The right to prosecute anybody for murder has been shifted. This matter was raised at Oputa. Gani gave his evidence.
I was going to make reference to Justice Oputa. And Mr. Falana, I'd like us to wrap up in this manner. I imagine that perhaps the reason, the intention of General Babangida was to lay a lot of questions, answer them, and lay things to rest, and offer a public apology. Unfortunately,
the book has raised more questions.
And you think it has opened more
Pandora box.
Now, the question here is that, is it possible that we move away from this history?
Take the one of Mama Vatsa, right? It was a case of premeditated murder. Whereas Vatsa and other officers were arrested in December 1985 on suspicion that they were planning a coup. At that time, the law did not allow the military. And so what happened? A month after the arrest, while they were in detention, General Babangida promulgated a decree on January 6, 1986, to try people who were arrested a month earlier. It's murder.
Mr. Falana, a lot of these things that happened in the military junta, and when we imagine that this the military regime is with force and sometimes without no depth of thought, of civility, and democratic thought.
And the Supreme Court said in the case of Garba and Federal Civil Service Commission, the military, in coming to power, again this is the language of justice section, is always faced with whether to allow the rule of law to operate or rule of force. But once the rule of law is taken, it's chosen, you must do everything in accordance with the law. So they had their choice. They pretended they were civilized. And so they rule by decrees. And so once you depart from the enabling decree, the court will strike down.
On a final note, I thought Justice Oputa's panel will have also helped to heal. And you were a very active participant in that session, which was supposed to be our own kind of a panel of a healing, reconciliation, and Nigeria moving forward from the horrific past of the military days. But on a final note, Mr.
General Babangida went to court to stop the panel from inviting him to give his own account. Oh yes.
So where do we go from here? You say you are taking this matter to court.
Oh, well, I'm suing the general for engaging in the massive infringement of my fundamental human rights. I'm also challenging the malicious prosecution of my person and my colleagues.
Senator Ojo Uzokalo is saying that President Tinubu should recognize for late MK Abiola as a former president of Nigeria. Do you think that was necessary?
It's already, since 1993, he has been recognized by the people of Nigeria as an elected president. they are just these guys, you know, who try to set the hands of the club back are just recognizing that now. And the last one is about this, they want to set up a library. No former military head of state has ever set up a library. What do you want to read there? You can only have a library set up by an elected president. You understand me? So I hope they will, you know, title it well. It should be military, a former military president, whatever, library. It shouldn't just be a presidential library because you confuse people.
Should it, General Babangida made it clear that it was military president, and there are those who debated that there is nothing like that.
No, there's nothing like that. No. You can't have a military president because the president is elected by the people. And so he said, why he chose the title in the book, why he chose the title president was that he did it in line with the suspended provision of the Constitution. That suspended provision of the Constitution did not recognize a military dictator. Everybody every officer under that Constitution must be elected.
Mr. Falana, thank you so very much. Do let us know as we move on with your litigation.
For sure.
Thank you.
Confirm now, with all the whole kepu we've been hearing about this whole matter, which I told you part of it in my last video, do you think that if legal action is taken against IBB, do you think something fruitful will come out of it? In fact, share your own thought with me on the comment section. And of course, you know the vibe now. Click on that subscribe button, follow, and share for more updates. Because like this, we move.